You're listening to the Big Cast, your source for the latest in financial technology. Brought to you weekly by the Best Innovation Group, with your hosts, John Best and Glenn Sarvati.
Welcome to another edition of the Big Cast. My name is Glenn Sarvati on behalf of the Best Innovation Group, where we like to do cool things with financial technology. And we have got a really good and far-ranging interview today with Barry McCarthy, the CEO of Deluxe Corporation. I'll be talking to him alongside Larry Williams, the CEO of the Technology Association of Georgia, previewing the upcoming FinTech South show that we've got in here in Atlanta, Georgia, in my hometown, August 27th and 28th. More about that in just a few minutes. But first, let me tell you that you can always find out more about the Best Innovation Group by checking out our website, big-fintech.com. And I'm also going to suggest that you check out our website at cutownhall.com. We have another one of our credit union town halls coming up, well, depending on when you're listening, it could even be tomorrow, on July 24th between it's a 1-hour event, happens at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. If you don't happen to be listening before then, you can always visit the website and you'll find a replay there. If you are interested in joining us live, and I hope you will, because they tend to be great interactive conversations with a lot of Q&A and both in the chat and people opening up their microphones as well. You do need to ask, it's free to attend, but you do need to ask for a registration and a link in advance, and you can do that right there at the cutownhall.com website. Just had a really good one on ransomware back a couple of weeks ago, and that replay is available on the website. I'm also going to tell you that this week the topic will have to do with AI's role, artificial intelligence's role in revolutionizing the accessibility aspects of online interactions, particularly through brain-computer interfaces. That sounds like pretty heady stuff, but John Best, our Grand Poobah, does an awfully good job of kind of deciphering that. And there's some really interesting developments going on in that space. So I would encourage you to check that out. I think you'll find it quite interesting. Really quickly, a couple of other kind of current events. I can't imagine that there are a whole lot of people around that did not hear about the CrowdStrike situation that hit last Friday. First thing I heard when my alarm went off, and here on the East Coast, I quickly went to my computer and discovered that most of that news had actually broken about 4 a.m. local time. Had a couple friends that got caught up at airports because of that, and one that's actually still stranded for a couple of days further. One of the things that I thought was an interesting, and thankfully there was very little disruption from a standpoint. I did hear some of the early headlines saying that some card networks were having a hard time actually processing transactions. I've seen Visa listed in some of the coverage, but it doesn't seem like the heavy impacts really affected them too much. One of the things that I thought an interesting kind of twist to this in terms of the way we think about things is pick your partners carefully, and even if they're not partners, think about, pick and be aware of how your name gets used in the marketplace. One of the things that was pointed out as I read some of the coverage, CrowdStrike, not a household name, unfortunately becoming more of a household name for the wrong reasons, but most people really thought of this as a Microsoft outage, unfortunately for them. As I was reminded this morning, and I'd kind of forgotten about this, CrowdStrike's products are antivirus products. I knew that, but they are intended to make Microsoft environments safer. They are not Microsoft products. In fact, Microsoft offers a competing product, Microsoft Defender. However, the Wall Street Journal reported that all day Friday and into the weekend, the number of Google searches for Microsoft outage were higher than the number of searches for CrowdStrike outage, which tells you that even if Microsoft had nothing really to do with this, by implication, people are associating their name with this one. Sometimes these things happen and it's because you chose your partner. This time you're not really choosing a partner, but they're still kind of feeling the brunt of it. So the messaging is always fascinating and only controllable to some extent. Another one that just showed up on my desk just earlier today, I was kind of ironically, an interesting use case. I have not seen this one in quite a while. Checks, and checks in the mail specifically. We've been hearing a lot about postal problems. It was actually a situation my wife came across and looking to make an initial payment to a client, and they were looking to do a recurring payment online. And I was amazed that she was having a hard time on the online portal. And when she called, they said, "Oh, yeah, that's a little bit confusing. We think it's better if you make the first payment by check in the mail." That pause was intentional. When was the last time you actually heard someone say, "Yeah, we want you to send a check in the mail"? So apparently it still happens, and it has to do with making sure that there's a clarity of receipt and something doesn't get lost and misposted the first time or something like that. I don't understand it. We're going to do it. I can obviously check online and make sure that the check cleared the bank and know that there was no problem, and how that doesn't change the situation. The second payment, when you actually do it online, I'm not sure I understand that one either. But that one threw me for a loop today, and I'm kind of curious if anybody has seen that. It sounds like it's a relatively small operation, so the check doesn't actually go to a lockbox. It actually is going to a human being who opens the envelope. I guess there's a bank of about 10 people sitting in this shop. So anyway, that was a surprise to me. And now going back to our main attraction, without further ado, Barry McCarthy has been a pillar in the community here of the Atlanta fintech space now for some time. He's going to be receiving the Hall of Fame Award at our FinTech South event, August 27th and 28th here. It's taking place at the Woodruff Arts Center and Symphony Hall, Atlanta Symphony Hall, and should be a great get-together. Wanted to have that conversation with Barry about kind of his history and exactly how his life has gone through the world of fintech. And we wound up going in some really interesting directions that I didn't necessarily expect when we started. You'll also hear Larry Williams, the CEO of the Technology Association of Georgia, who obviously, not obviously, the Technology Association of Georgia is actually the ones who put on the FinTech South event, and I'm heavily involved with them. So we had a conversation and then got into a lot of the details about Barry's background. He's been with Deluxe, and there's a transformation story, which is fascinating, that's taking place there as we speak. But more of his time here in Atlanta was with First Data Corporation, which is now part of Fiserv. And most of my time that I've known him, or was actually known of him even longer, he was thought of as kind of the main presence in Atlanta during a very challenging time. I guess transformation might be a proper word to some extent, but turmoil might be a better one. Just knowing, again, some of the things we talked about. He lived through a leveraged buyout and then a company going back into the public markets and a great financial crisis right in the middle of it, right about the time that they actually did the leveraged buyout. And then going back even further than that, a couple of startups that he was involved in, which I was not really aware of until I started doing some research before this interview. But anyway, no further ado, let's just jump into my conversation with Larry Williams of the Technology Association of Georgia and Barry McCarthy, the CEO of Deluxe. I'm looking forward to this conversation. We have both Barry McCarthy, the CEO and president of Deluxe Corporation, and Larry Williams, CEO and president of the Technology Association of Georgia, here to talk about the FinTech Hall of Fame here in Atlanta, and Barry McCarthy being our most recent inductee. Thanks to both of you for taking some time on a busy summer afternoon.
Thanks, Glenn. Delighted to be here.
Likewise.
Larry, let me start with you. I mean, we've been naming, recognizing, and inducting members into Georgia's FinTech Hall of Fame since 2010.
Right.
How do you think about what makes these leaders stand out, and how do you consider Barry as far as how he fits into the mix there?
Oh, wow. That's pretty easy, Glenn. And I think number one, if we really think about where Georgia is in its position in fintech, we really have been part of this ecosystem, for decades. I mean, it goes way back. We didn't just, like some communities, stand up and say, hey, we're going to be big in fintech. We go all the way back to, being a nexus and a hub for financial transactions, all the way up to these things called checks and processing checks, if anybody remembers those, and then actually digitizing that whole process throughout the years to what we call fintech and our digital transactions.
I typically think back to the origination of the ACH, which pretty much started out of the Atlanta Fed and Georgia Tech.
That's a great point. And so the other part is that Georgia, we've helped build every layer of that onion. So again, we know what it is. And so that's also put us in a position to understand what's going to be next. And how do you build what's next? Because you got a foundation of having built the previous thing or the thing that was current at the time. And so whenever we throw out the stats like Georgia processes 70% of all debit, credit, and reward card transactions, it's because we've earned our position and we've learned how to make these things work. And that's why all major transaction companies are here and continuing to grow their companies uh, in Georgia because we know how to do it. And so, um, you know, 70%, if you're 51%, you're number one. If you're 70%, you dominate. And if we think about some of the luminaries that have started this throughout Georgia, going all the way back to Jimmy Blanchard with Synovus, Pete Kite with Fiserv, Paul Garcia with Global Payments, all of these people have had great contributions to putting us into an excellent position to be a fintech leader and a global fintech leader. You fast forward into today, recently, Scott Grimes and Lynn Loeb with Cardlytics, Rob Frorine and Catherine Petralia with Cabbage, all leaders in their field. So fast forward to today, and we're here to celebrate a great leader, Barry McCarthy, and what he's done, not only in fintech precisely, Barry has also been integral in the ecosystem here in Georgia. And part of his DNA of wanting to be a part of something that is positive and that really helps contribute to the ecosystem, helps build careers, but also helps expand Georgia's presence in fintech globally. So I can't think of somebody more deserving to be inducted into the Georgia FinTech Hall of Fame than Barry McCarthy.
Couldn't agree more. And I was actually, Barry, I definitely wanted to talk about your civic responsibility, which I think is, kind of, in my mind, very key. It's kind of a recurring theme in what I see in your background. Layering the onion is, as Larry put it, not to put a tear to your eye. But I think also, not even going back, like you said, Larry, beyond even First Data and Deluxe, your background. I mean, you also, I think a lot of people are not aware that you were involved in a couple of startup organizations. So you've really touched pretty much every aspect of the ecosystem, even before you got here to Atlanta. But first off, congratulations. And maybe the best place to start is with Deluxe. I mean, you joined Deluxe as the CEO in 2018. A very long-standing company. It's already celebrated its 100th anniversary. What attracted you to the opportunity to take over a legacy company like this?
First, Glenn, I'm humbled by your generous comments and Larry's as well. This award, the giants that have come before, to be included with that level and caliber of leader is quite humbling and a really big honor that I'm incredibly grateful for. So I'm very humbled by that and proud to be here. But I think what, Glenn, you were going after is, how did I get myself to Deluxe? And Deluxe, I think, as everyone that would be listening would know, is a 109-year-old company. It got started as a check printer, and while we still print checks, that's less than a third of our company's revenue. Today, we're a modern payments and data company, and we deliver merchant services or credit cards, debit cards for small to mid-sized businesses. We have a large-scale B2B payment business, helping businesses manage accounts receivable and payables. We have a large-scale data business, helping financial institutions and others identify and target their next customer, along, of course, with our check and our print businesses. And over the last handful of years, the company really has transformed to become this modern payments and data company. And I think there's two things that maybe tell the story best there. The first is that we're in our fourth consecutive year of organic revenue growth. Now we have more to go, but this is a company that had not grown organically in at least a decade before I had arrived. And there's a school of thought that says it was back to 1996. So however long it has been, it's been a very long time since this company grew organically. And now we're growing. We're in our fourth consecutive year of organic growth. And we're doing that through the transformation into a payments and data company. The second is that the scale of what we've been able to get accomplished in payments and data, I think might surprise most people, that we're processing about close to $3 trillion a year in payment volume. That's roughly 15% of the US GDP. And that's all from a company that people still think is just a check printer, but we're so much more than that, and we've really made a lot of progress in the last handful of years.
I'd never seen that 15% statistic about the GDP. That one's phenomenal. That really, that really puts it into a totally different kind of frame of reference. I think our listeners are aware, I believe, the full disclosure. I worked at Deluxe for a couple of years myself. This predates Larry, or Barry rather. And one of the things I see is, and you spearheaded this acquisition of First American Payment Systems, which, as I understand it, was the biggest acquisition that Deluxe has ever made. And that really reset the bar with regard to the payments business as opposed to the check printing business. Can you say a bit about how that deal came about? I mean, were you out looking for something in that space? Was it opportunistic? How did that actually kind of fall into place?
Absolutely. So we're really proud of the business that was created called First American. Now inside of Deluxe, we call it Deluxe Merchant Services. But what we recognized that our company had that was extraordinary was 4 million small business customers, 4,000 bank partners, and hundreds of the world's leading brands using one or more of our products. But was most foundational for every business on the planet is that you have to be able to get paid and you have to be able to pay. If you can't pay, get paid, and grow, you really don't have a business, and there is no commerce without being able to pay. And so we looked at that, and we also looked at the fact that we've got a really great reputation, that the people that came before me, the previous 8 CEOs in the company's 109-year history, really focused on delivering great customer service and being trustworthy. And we thought we could really take those assets and get them focused in an area that's really important. And merchant services or credit cards and debit cards for small to mid-sized businesses was an area we thought we could succeed in. And we went to the market looking for an asset. And there's lots of great assets in the market, that many of them are ISOs, independent sales organizations that are really renting someone else's processing platform. And it allows them to be focused on being a sales organization. And what we really were looking for was we wanted to actually own a processing platform. And First American had one of the few scaled independent processing platforms in the marketplace. And we wanted to be a processor, not just a sales engine, because we felt like we could bring many, many new customers to the platform that over time would give us scale advantage and the opportunity to grow our market share. And we did a pretty exhaustive search across the landscape. We kept coming back to First American because of 3 things. First of all, we wanted a scaled platform, meaning that we wanted something that was proven. We didn't want to have to prove it was going to work. We wanted to know that it did work. And the First American platform and the First American business has been operating for over 25 years and doing it already at scale. The second thing was that we wanted to have a team of people that came with the business, a management team that were experts and deep and knowledgeable and well respected across the industry. And that's what we found at First American. We also looking for a business that we felt like we could help scale, where we could bring the scale, scope, relationships, partnerships that Deluxe has to help that business grow. And First American was the best fit and a really remarkable fit. And we're really, really proud of the success there. Historically, that business had been a low to mid-single digit revenue grower. And in the first quarter of this year, we reported almost 9% revenue growth. And we've reported in the time we've had it, which was 3 years, we've had several periods where there's been double-digit growth. And we just think it speaks to the power of our brand, our distribution capability, and the quality of what First American is, that by putting those assets together in the way that we did, the sum of the parts are worth much more than the parts individually.
Makes sense. And, again, 9% is particularly impressive for a business that was already, I don't want to say mature, but it wasn't still on the early stage of the growth curve. It was an established business. So that's good stuff.
Thank you. We agree. And, the business still has lots of opportunity to expand and grow in some of the faster growing categories. And you'll see us move in that direction over the coming periods.
Now, you were in the seat, the CEO chair, for about a year when COVID hit. And obviously, you were kind of tasked with a transformation. And, it was even a little bit after that, the First American came into the mix. But, best laid plans, suddenly you had a totally different set of immediate imperatives. How did that both alter the way you were approaching the transformation, and how did you pivot on a dime as far as kind of keeping everything running? Because obviously, like you say, you got 4,000 financial institutions, all these small businesses that are still going to be relying on you.
I think everybody has their COVID war story, and we certainly have ours. We had just reorganized the company. We had just finished hiring the new executive leadership team, or the ELT. The last person who was seated on January 1st. We had an investor day early in February, the first one in the company's history. We were laying out the new strategy. And within a week, we were all at home in our basements.
Wow.
It was pretty stunning change of events, but it really called, I think, on all of us to work together and find ways to work together quickly as a team, and find new ways to be a team remotely. And I know everyone faced that challenge. I think ours was particularly acute since the management team hardly knew each other at this point. We
I
had
was
just
going to
seated the last
say
member.
that's the thing. I keep thinking, if a group's been working for a long time and they already have built up that cohesion and that trust and everything, moving to Zoom isn't quite as hard. When you've got basically strangers coming in, that's a challenge, no question.
It was, but really, really proud of how the team pulled through and how well the company performed. Like a lot of businesses, we lost a ton of our volume and revenue literally overnight. But we bounced back and have grown from there. We did lots of things to encourage teamwork, from having regular daily stand-up calls where everybody was on the call. I literally kept an Excel spreadsheet where I would make sure that I was touching base with every single person on the leadership team every day, individually, one-on-one. And I know others on the team were doing the same. It took extra effort and extra focus. But I think we did come out of COVID much stronger as a team, and certainly as a company. And we just continued to march on. Of course, we slowed some things down where we were making investments. Other places we accelerated. But we found a pathway to continue the transformation, despite the fact that we were all working on separate islands in our basements.
Yeah. One more thing on Deluxe, and I mentioned before civic responsibility. I know you've built a wonderful innovation center here in Atlanta. I know Deluxe already had an Atlanta presence, but you've expanded on that. You've also made a recommitment in your Minneapolis headquarters. You've moved into the downtown core, and you've got a lovely building down there as well. And it feels to me that that's kind of part and parcel with some of your philosophy. Can you talk about your sense of responsibility to the communities in which you participate?
I really appreciate the question. And I do fundamentally believe that as business leaders, we have an obligation to give back. The community provides so much in the way of support for our business success that we need to make sure that we provide support back to the community. And that's even reflected in the Deluxe, in our mission statement, which is we help businesses succeed so communities can thrive. That's our mission statement. And because we are primarily, not exclusively, but primarily a B2B company, we understand the importance of helping a business get paid and grow and succeed, because then they hire more people. Those people have needs for a pizza and a dry cleaner and an auto repair. And those businesses then grow, hiring more people that have needs for our services. And it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. And along the way, that means there's more money and resources for parks and roads and schools and healthcare and all the things that people care about. And we see ourselves as an engine for the community's success. And then we back that up not just with words and nice platitudes. We actually have a unique benefit for our employees called VTO, or volunteer time off, where 100% of our employees have the opportunity to take up to 5 days off paid to go work with a not-for-profit organization in the community. And those not-for-profits are eligible for grants from our foundation or matching grants from our employee when an employee makes a donation. So we really back up the idea of what we are, which is an organization that helps businesses succeed so communities can. And then we put our time, talent, and treasure in the community to help the community thrive as well. It's all of those things combined that make for a vibrant community. And we're particularly proud of, in the fintech space, all that's happened in Atlanta. And that's why our innovation center we chose to open here. We did a national search to find the best location, and Atlanta was a hands down location. The quality of talent, the focus on fintech that already existed, a state government that was supportive, not to mention great airport, great educational institutions, et cetera, moderate cost of living. And we've had great success in building our payments team in the Atlanta area, and that's helped our company succeed.
And you've been generous as well. I know we've hosted a couple of events at your innovation center with the Technology Association of Georgia. We certainly appreciate that too. I think we all saw this coming. We've got so much to cover, and I'm going to have to kind of probably cut short some of the other questions, but I don't want to shortchange your experience at First Data, which is what brought you to Atlanta in the first place. And a really interesting piece in my mind of your resume is, people have followed the path of First Data. You joined before they had the leverage buyout and went private. You were still there when they went back to going to be a public company after an IPO, and you were still there when they were acquired finally and combined with Fiserv. And I think you're the only member of the executive leadership team that lived through that entire process, which must have been quite a ride. Anything you
It's an
can
incredible ride. And the only little twist there is I actually left at the end of 18, and Fiserv didn't happen until February or March of 19. But everything else you said was exactly right, and that I was the only senior executive to survive and thrive through all of that. And I had the opportunity to work for 8 different CEOs in that time.
Okay, so wait, I think you said there were 8 CEOs in 109 years at Deluxe, and
yes,
there's 8 in First Data in, what was that, like 11 years, 12 years?
Wow. Exactly. There are 9 at Deluxe, including me, in 109 years, and there were 8 in 9 or 10 years at. I was there for 12 years, 14 years. Sorry, in the 14 years I was there.
That's amazing. And for quite a bit of that time, I think you were kind of the face of the Atlanta operation, which is, kind of the nerve center to a great extent. But, and again, transformation. I mean, when you're talking about an LBO and kind of the change of a business as it's being taken private and then being scaled up again. And again, this all happened, I think you went, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you went private just before the financial crisis, which of course I'm sure just upended all the financial models that the leverage buyout firms were applying in terms of the way they were trying to actually approach this transaction. I mean, the level of turmoil. I'm kind of curious how you think about managing through that kind of change.
One of the things I'm so grateful about in that experience, I did have an opportunity to work for some really incredible leaders there, and I got a chance to learn from so much from each of them. But what I really learned was about focus, discipline, and courage. There was a long period of time when First Data was almost 11 times levered, meaning it owed 11 times its annual income or its annual profitability. And that's very focusing, because that means any mistake can be a catastrophe for the company, and that the whole company can go bankrupt. So get very focused and very disciplined on execution. And I think that's helped very much here at Deluxe. And certainly we have not been perfect, but it has been a big help to me in leading this organization through massive change, through the turmoil of COVID. We've sold several dozen businesses here. We acquired a big business, reorganized the company, and it really become this payments and data company. And I think without all that previous experience, I don't know that we would be able to have done some of the things we've done. So very, very grateful for the opportunities, lessons, and the opportunity to work for some just truly outstanding leaders at First Data.
Yeah, I don't want to shortchange one other piece I want to touch on. You were part of a micropayment startup. And when I say micropayments, I think you focused on transactions of under $10 called MagnaCash. And you were also involved in VeriSign. I don't think that was technically a startup per se, but you actually built out a payments business that wound up becoming part of PayPal, which to me, after, 2 of the big companies in the space, or rather before those 2, talking about Deluxe and First Data, you had the other side of the equation about the growth curve and the newer kind of startup type operations. How did that kind of inform your approach to the way you think about the fintech space?
You get a gold star for homework and digging. That's very impressive. But I did start a micropayments company called MagnaCash. It did exactly what Apple iTunes checkout does today, or the App Store does. If you're Instead of doing 10 $1 transactions, it aggregates them and does one $10 transaction. Much more cost efficient, easier for everyone to manage. I was fortunate enough to sell that business, and ultimately was owned by a company called Digital River. After that, I ran the payments business inside of VeriSign, which most people would know as the security company, a little checkbox down in the bottom that talks about the security of the website. And they had acquired a number of assets and had not put them together, integrated them in a meaningful way, which I did, added some security products, some fraud detection products, and that business ultimately got sold to PayPal, and it continues to operate today as part of it is their PayPal gateway if a business wants to take credit cards directly. And I think both of those experiences taught me a lot about what's required to understand what a consumer or a business wants, and then how you have to move at speed if you're going to be successful. I've tried to bring that here with me to Deluxe, and bring some of that entrepreneurial spirit here to help the ship move even faster. I think that's been helpful here as well.
I think you kind of covered this a little bit when you talked about the selection process for the Innovation Center in Atlanta, but both for Larry and Barry, both of you, I'm curious, what do you see as kind of the unique features that make the Atlanta ecosystem stand out in both payments and fintech? And Barry, why don't you take that first, if you don't mind?
Sure. Well, to start with, I have had the opportunity to live all across the country. I've lived in Cleveland, Sacramento, San Francisco, Cincinnati, San Jose, Milwaukee, Denver. Now I split my time between Atlanta and Minneapolis. And the Atlanta ecosystem is truly unique. There is no other organization in America like the Technology Association of Georgia that has 30,000 members. 30,000 members. That means that this technology community is engaged, it's on fire, they come out to support each other, and they together have built an incredibly remarkable ecosystem. In financial technology in particular, the 400 corridor has been nicknamed the Transaction Alley because I think 70% of the world's payment volume is managed through a company that's either headquartered in the corridor or with significant operations here. And that's really significant. And then, of course, the university system jumps in and helps and puts together the FinTech Academy, helping create work-ready college graduates to come to companies like ours. It's truly, truly remarkable. And I don't know of any other like it anywhere in the country.
Larry beat that. I think you've stated it wonderfully. Anything to add to that one?
You did. We're going to put him in economic development. It's just building on that. And the way I always describe Georgia is really it's where technology meets the real world. And what I mean by that is, we're not just boasting about being something when it comes to Georgia. We don't necessarily have the shiniest new objects or the coolest new social apps, but we have people building businesses that drive revenue, probably more so than anywhere else in the country or even the world. And so we quietly build things like fintech. We quietly build things like cybersecurity, and we build things that are deep and rich and with strong roots. And that's how we continue to be dominant in so many areas and with a broad portfolio. So the innovation that's here, always thinking about, not only what's now, but what's next, that happens in Georgia. And that brings together all of the components that Barry just outlined. And it really makes it a unique space when it comes to technology and innovation in the world.
And Barry mentioned also that we really come together nicely too. And I think that's a perfect transition. We've got the FinTech South event coming up August 27th and 28th. And a new location, which I think is going to be great, down in the Arts Center here, and using the Symphony Hall main stage, where Barry's going to be accepting the Hall of Fame award, and I believe sitting down and having a chat kind of similar to this with Larry. Can you, anything else people can expect on the 27th and 28th that you can share, Larry?
Well, it's going to be an incredible event. So Barry, once again, congratulations on being our inductee to the Georgia FinTech Hall of Fame this year. I'm delighted to recognize you along with the rest of the community here. FinTech South at the Woodruff Arts Center, it is an iconic location in Georgia to host an iconic industry in Georgia. So it's the right place. It's August 27th and 28th. We have a world-class lineup. Please, everyone, go to fintechsouth.com, look at some of our keynote speakers, look at the types of conversations that we're going to be having. It's just going to be a who's who of who's in the room, and we're going to be talking about the right topics that are really going to be the next iteration of what fintech's going to look like in the world. We're really at this great pivotal moment and a transitional stage of the whole fintech industry, and that's what we're going to be talking about at FinTech South.
And again, we've been doing these for, I've lost count, a dozen years. I forget how many, but yeah, multiple tracks. I mean, no matter what level or aspect of fintech you're interested in, there will be a track and sessions for you to engage, and also lots of people to meet in the hallways.
And Glenn, I appreciate all your help and leadership in the whole fintech community, as well as FinTech South and the TAG FinTech Society.
I appreciate that as well. Larry and Barry, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you both taking the time. If people want to learn more about Deluxe, deluxe.com, best place, Barry?
That's exactly the place to go. Yep. And look forward to seeing everybody at FinTech South, and just got to thank Larry and all of TAG for this incredible honor. It's really humbling.
And again, fintechsouth.com for more about the event coming up. Barry McCarthy, President and CEO of Deluxe. Larry Williams, the President and CEO of the Technology Association of Georgia. Thanks to both of you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Glenn. Congratulations, Barry.
So as we said, August 27th and 28th here in Atlanta, Georgia at the Woodruff Arts Center and Atlanta Symphony Hall. It really is a great event. I hope you consider joining us there. I will certainly be there. And as we mentioned, if you check out our show notes, which you can find at the website, big-fintech.com, and you should also be able to click through if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find that and get a discount on your registration. A couple of names you may be familiar with who are going to be on stage there. Bev Anderson, the CEO of BECU, will be one of the speakers. Credit union flavor coming out from there. And James Anderson, I'm very interested. We spoke to James Anderson, it was going on about a year ago now, from Pays, the digital wallet that's being offered by Early Warning Systems. It's now in the process of rolling out on a regional basis in a few places. And I am very interested in hearing where that one stands right now. I think they're going to be making a bit more of a splash over the course of the second part of this year as we get back into the fall conference season. So I definitely want to hear what he has to say. A lot of the other fintech companies, not necessarily Atlanta-based, but very central to what's going on, Plaid, Square, Stripe, Affirm, they will all be speaking as well. Take a look, fintechsouth.com, great lineup. Hopefully you can join us. Enough of that. Again, my name is Glenn Sarvati. You can track me down via my firm, 154 Advisors. You can find me at LinkedIn. You can find me via the Best Innovation Group website, big-fintech.com, where you'll find them on also on LinkedIn, or on X at Big FinTech. You'll find me at 154 Advisors. You can also find our grand poobah, John Best, at JB FinTech. We'll be back with more content next week. Got a couple more things already lined up that I think you're going to find very interesting. The next one's kind of data heavy, which I love data. I hope you do too. It's always one of my favorite things to dig into. So, check us out next week. New content every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts, or come straight to the website, big-fintech.com. Thanks for listening.
Check back each week for the latest from the Big Cast. Or better yet, we hope you'll consider subscribing for free via Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at Big FinTech. Email info@big-fintech.com. Or visit us at big-fintech.com and click on the Media tab, where you can post a comment or check out our archive of hundreds of past episodes. See you next week.